The Northeast is under siege. Over 25 million people are battening down as nature unleashes its fury across one of America's most densely populated regions. This isn't just another storm system, it's a weather event that's bringing damaging winds, tornadoes, and flash flooding from Maryland all the way to Maine. And it's happening right now. As Saturday evening approaches, the atmosphere is electric with danger. A severe thunderstorm watch blankets the entire Interstate 95 corridor, that critical artery connecting Baltimore, Philadelphia, New York City, and Boston.
You got a lot of thunderstorm fuel from Washington, D.C. and Baltimore up through Philly, over toward New York, the Hudson Valley, Connecticut, Massachusetts. The atmosphere is very ripe, very unstable. That's why we expect these thunderstorms to form. But you need one more thing to get severe weather, and that is wind shear. Wind shear effectively allows storms to organize, and the more they organize, the higher the shear, the higher the instability, the stronger they can be. And you can get supercell thunderstorms, or storms that start to rotate if you've got the right balance between cape and shear. And I want to show you that shear here. Let's go to Saturday afternoon. Notice this red shading. That's about 40 to the white shading is about 50 knots of shear between 0 and 6 kilometers above our head. So, a couple miles up, right? And that's a lot. I mean, we look at a threshold, about 30 knots is the threshold you need for severe weather. 35 knots is better. 40 knots is pretty good. 40 to 50 knots is really good. And so that tells me that we're going to have storms organized, and some of those storms are going to be severe. And we want to look at low-level shear. So that was deep layer shear. That's going to organize a whole complex of storms. But the low-level shear in the lowest 2 or 3 kilometers of the air, that's what can give you a rotating storm or some low-level rotation.
These aren't ordinary summer storms. These are powerful, potentially destructive weather systems that demand immediate attention. What makes this weather event particularly dangerous is the convergence of multiple atmospheric factors. A powerful cold front is sweeping across the Northeast, colliding with warm, humid air that has been building for days. Add significant wind shear to the mix, with values reaching 40 to 50 knots, and you have all the ingredients needed for severe weather development. The atmospheric instability, measured by CAPE values, is off the charts, creating the perfect atmospheric cocktail for disaster. The primary threats are multifaceted and deadly. Devastating wind gusts capable of snapping trees like twigs and turning everyday objects into projectiles are racing across the region.
Words of the National Weather Service: take cover now, move to a basement or interior room and the lowest floor in a sturdy building. This is heading right towards Worcester. Let's zoom in on the communities that we are seeing this for. So right now, over spots like Holden, West Boylston, Shrewsbury, seeing very gusty winds, but where I'm thinking that they are probably seeing a debris signature is right here between Holden and West Boylston. So watching that very closely, spots like Summit, and then eventually it will make it towards Boylston and Berlin. So just be very careful of that. Now let's look at this correlation coefficient where we potentially are seeing a debris signature. So this can indicate, a lot of times this spot right here is indicating hail, and that is likely an indicator of larger hail. But what we're seeing right here just south of Holden is a circular area where if there is a rotating tornado, it is sending, well, now we have a tornado on the ground. So where the tornado is, this is sending debris in the air as it continues.
Large hail is pelting down while lightning illuminates skies filled with ominous, towering thunderheads. But perhaps most concerning is the tornado threat, particularly in areas just inland from the coast, where conditions are most favorable for these violent twisters to develop. As the afternoon progressed, meteorologists tracked the approaching menace with growing concern. The storm system that had been building strength was now bearing down on Worcester County and surrounding areas. Rotation signatures appeared on radar, sending weather teams into high alert mode. The warning extended across multiple counties, with the storm cell moving from Springfield toward Worcester, giving residents precious little time to seek shelter. Then came the moment everyone feared. The National Weather Service confirmed what radar was already showing: a tornado was on the ground. The velocity scans revealed unmistakable rotation, and more ominously, a debris signature appeared on the correlation coefficient scan. This circular pattern meant the tornado was actively destroying structures and vegetation, debris being lofted high into the turbulent sky.
You can barely see because the rain's coming down so hard. Although we do have a couple pockets where notice that the yellow's coming in. That's showing some moderate rain at times. Most of this flanking just south of New York, actually in the Philadelphia area out towards Trenton. Then we have another pocket of heavy rain near Hartford and out towards Wallingford. If we want to talk about where that tornado was, it was in this general area in Massachusetts. But let's talk about some of the severe storm reports. I mean, a lot of reports of trees down. We even had a hail report of 1.5 inches. I mean, that is significant hail when we're talking about storms this far north. And that just goes to show the available energy that was here. Just running through with some of these storm reports, trees and wires down, so some isolated power outages was certainly seen yesterday. Wind damage in Paxton, in Holden, that was the town where we had that tornado, large tree down on Bailey Road, making it impassable. So let's break down this tornado really quickly here. We're showing you the past radar where, yes, it was a bit of a mess, not a classic rogue supercell, more of this bigger complex. But you can see that spin within that shield of precip. You take it one step forward. This is looking at debris tracker, something non-meteorological being lofted into the air. And you see this small...
In Massachusetts, the confirmed tornado tore through Holden around 4 p.m., leaving behind a trail of devastation. The tornado warning had been upgraded that morning as conditions deteriorated rapidly. Multiple tornado warnings were issued simultaneously across the region, with radar-indicated rotation visible in several storm cells. The storms produced not just tornadoes but also significant hail, chunks of ice 1.5 inches in diameter that cracked windshields and damaged property. The human impact was immediate and severe. In Holden and nearby Paxton, roads became impassable as massive trees toppled across streets. Power lines tangled in the wreckage left thousands without electricity. Homes suffered damage from trees crashing through roofs and walls. Emergency crews struggled to keep up with the volume of calls as nature's fury was on full display. But here's what makes these storms particularly dangerous. They're moving slowly. When thunderstorms crawl across the landscape, they dump torrential rain over the same areas for extended periods. The result is flash flooding that can turn streets into rivers and overwhelm drainage systems that simply weren't designed for this volume of water. The National Weather Service isn't mincing words about the flood threat. They've issued a level 2 out of 4 flash flood risks stretching from Philadelphia to Bridgeport, Connecticut. This means widespread flooding is not just possible, it's likely. Urban areas with poor drainage are particularly vulnerable, where even a few inches of rain can create life-threatening conditions in minutes. The geographic scope of this weather event is staggering. From Maryland's Chesapeake Bay to Maine's rocky coastline, millions of people are experiencing the same atmospheric violence. The Hudson Valley, western Connecticut, western and central Massachusetts, parts of eastern New York, and southern New Hampshire face the highest risk for severe weather and tornado development. In Holyoke, Massachusetts, the scene is one of widespread disruption. Multiple roadways have been forced to close as crews work to clear fallen trees and debris. The storm system isn't discriminating in its target. Even major sporting events have felt the impact. At the U.S. Open in Queens, New York, spectators were forced to scramble for shelter as heavy downpours swept through the area. The iconic tennis tournament became a scene of chaos as people ran through wet streets seeking cover from the deluge. Time-lapse videos from across the region tell the story of this weather event's intensity. In Chicopee, Massachusetts, cameras captured the dramatic moment as severe thunderstorms rolled across the landscape like an advancing army. The sky darkened ominously as towering cumulonimbus clouds stretched high into the atmosphere, their anvil-shaped tops spreading outward as they reached the tropopause. But there's a silver lining to this weather disaster, one that reveals just how desperate the region has become for moisture.
Causing power outages and downed trees. In Massachusetts, this street completely underwater. 33 million Americans from New England to Baltimore caught up in scattered thunderstorms, spawning 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts with bouts of hail and heavy rain. The brief deluge in New York causing tennis fans outside the U.S. Open to run for cover. Out west, hundreds of firefighters back on the front lines. Overnight, the fast-moving...
Despite the flooding concerns, more than 70% of the Northeast is currently experiencing unusually dry conditions, or is officially in drought. The irony is stark. The same storms causing flash flooding are actually providing much-needed relief to a region that has been parched for months. This drought context makes the current weather event even more significant. When rain falls on drought-hardened soil, it often runs off rather than soaking in, increasing the flash flood risk. The ground simply can't absorb the water fast enough, turning what should be beneficial rainfall into a dangerous hazard. The storms didn't appear out of nowhere. This same weather system has been wreaking havoc across the eastern United States for days. On Friday, the frontal boundary triggered severe weather across the Tennessee Valley, producing hail the size of tennis balls and winds powerful enough to topple numerous trees. It's been a slow-moving disaster that's methodically worked its way across the country. As Saturday evening progresses, the danger is far from over. Meteorologists are warning that damaging winds, large hail, and frequent lightning will continue into the overnight hours. The slim but real possibility of additional brief tornadoes keeps emergency management officials on high alert across the region. Multiple rounds of heavy rain are expected as storms train over the same areas, a meteorological term describing when successive thunderstorms move over identical locations like cars on a railroad track. This training effect can produce localized flash flooding even in areas that don't typically flood, catching residents and emergency responders off guard. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of this weather event is what comes next. Behind this powerful storm system, a dramatic change is taking place. Cooler air is sweeping in from the Midwest, bringing what meteorologists are describing as refreshing, fall-like conditions to the Northeast for the second half of the weekend. This temperature contrast is part of what's making the storm so intense. The greater the difference between warm and cold air masses, the more energy is available for severe weather development. It's basic atmospheric physics, but the results can be anything but basic when nature decides to flex its muscles. The cooling trend represents more than just a brief respite from summer heat. Weather models suggest this is part of a larger pattern change that could bring early fall-like conditions to much of the eastern United States. After months of above-normal temperatures and drought conditions, this shift could provide significant relief if communities can weather the violent transition. For emergency management officials across the Northeast, this weather event represents a perfect storm of challenges: urban flash flooding, tornado damage, widespread power outages, and the need to coordinate responses across multiple states simultaneously. It's the kind of scenario that tests the aspect of emergency preparedness. The human impact of severe weather events like this extends far beyond the immediate physical damage. Businesses lose revenue when forced to close. Commuters face dangerous travel conditions. Families worry about loved ones caught in the storms. The psychological stress of severe weather can linger long after the skies clear. What makes this particular weather event noteworthy is its timing and intensity. Early September is typically a transition period in the Northeast when summer's heat begins to give way to autumn's cooler temperatures. But this year, that transition is happening with explosive force, creating conditions ripe for severe weather. The meteorological setup behind these storms involves complex interactions between different air masses, upper-level atmospheric patterns, and surface heating. As the day progressed and temperatures climbed, the atmosphere became increasingly unstable. When the cold front arrived, it was like pulling the trigger on a loaded weapon. Looking at satellite imagery, the storm system appears as a massive, swirling mass of clouds stretching across hundreds of miles. The distinctive hook echoes on radar that indicate tornado development have been appearing with concerning frequency, keeping meteorologists glued to their screens and ready to issue warnings at a moment's notice. For residents across the affected region, the advice is simple but critical. Take these warnings seriously. Flash flooding can develop rapidly, turning familiar streets into deadly torrents. Tornadoes can form quickly and with little advance warning. High winds can turn trees and debris into projectiles capable of causing serious injury or death. The economic impact of severe weather events like this reaches into the billions of dollars annually. From crop damage and property destruction to business interruptions and emergency response costs, the financial toll of extreme weather continues to grow as climate patterns become more volatile. As night falls across the Northeast, the weather battle continues. Emergency crews stand ready to respond to calls for help. Meteorologists monitor radar screens for signs of tornado development. Millions of people wait and hope that the worst of the storm will pass them by. But this weather event also serves as a reminder of nature's awesome power and our continuing vulnerability to its forces. Despite all our technological advances and warning systems, we remain at the mercy of atmospheric processes that dwarf human capabilities. The storms are expected to continue through the overnight hours before finally beginning to weaken and move offshore. Only then will the full scope of damage become clear. Only then can the long process of cleanup and recovery begin. For now, over 25 million people across the Northeast remain under the threat of severe weather, flash flooding, and tornadoes. It's a sobering reminder that in the battle between humans and nature, nature still holds most of the cards. The best we can do is prepare, stay informed, and respect the incredible forces that shape our weather and our world. This is the reality of extreme weather in the 21st century, more intense, more unpredictable, and more dangerous than ever before. As this storm system finally moves out to sea, communities across the Northeast will begin the familiar process of assessing damage, clearing debris, and rebuilding. But they'll also be watching the skies, knowing that the next severe weather event is always just one weather pattern away.